I almost hate to start. The music is so good. Now I'm going to have to be as good as that. I don't know if I can do that. Hi, everybody. I'm John Truby, and I want to welcome you to the Story Rescue Workshop. Some of you I've already met in my Secrets of Genres class yesterday. We had a lot of fun there. Today, we switch focus from the genres that determine how your story works to the structural foundations that make any story great. This is a workshop designed to help you fix your story right now. So I've created some worksheets so that you can apply the techniques that we will be covering today. To get the Story Rescue worksheets, go to tinyurl.com/TrubyVegasRescue. Now, every time I come here, I'm extremely impressed by the commitment of the writers here. It's really great to see writers taking control of their career. That's something we have to do. And when I'm here, I always hear so many great ideas about how to sell your work. But unfortunately, I also hear some disappointment from people who aren't getting the success that they want. Let me give you some examples. They're struggling to get traction on the books that they've written. Readers aren't buying after the first book. In other words, they aren't showing up for the whole series. The check at the end of the month isn't even hitting $100. Some of you are pounding out a book a month and probably staying up all hours to do it, but the money is not coming in. The fact is, 99% of indie authors have experienced these problems, but I believe it doesn't have to be that way. So, how do I know? I've been helping writers create stories that sell for a very long time. In fact, I've been working with many of your colleagues over the last few years since I first started coming to the 20Books conference. As such, I've developed a number of techniques to help you write bestsellers in every genre. And I'm going to share some of these techniques with you today. Also want to leave time at the end so that I can answer your specific problems, the problems you are dealing with in your story right now. Now, let's start at the bottom line. Whether you're using Amazon or not, unless you're writing 3 books minimum in the same series, the same genre, you're wasting your time. That requires a massive amount of plot. Every expert will tell you that the economics of indie publishing come down to series read-through. That's the key to the investment that you have to make. Now, the costs of advertising are such that if you write just one book, you will lose money. If you write a lot of books with low read-through, you will lose money. But if you can get a high percentage of people to read a number of books in your series, then you can make a lot of money. And there's a few people at this conference who are doing that. So read-through is the key to writing stories that sell. And that means, 1, write a lot of books fast, and 2, you need a ton of plot to carry them through. And that means that the first key point to getting maximum read-through is that character is what catches your reader, but plot is what keeps them. Fact, lack of plot is the biggest problem in popular story today, especially when writing a novel series. An amount of plot is what separates the top sellers from everybody else. So here's the $64 million question. How do you generate the massive amount of plot required to get a whopping 90% read-through? It all comes down to the single most important set of plot techniques known as narrative drive. In the movie industry, this is the term they use for how the audience is driven forward through the story at breakneck speed. Everything you write must be focused toward giving your story intense narrative drive, which means you get more people reading through the second, third, and fourth books. So how do you create that powerful push to keep readers engaged book after book? You do it with a set of simple but powerful plot techniques. And I'm going to share some of the most important ones I know in just a moment. But first, here's something that may surprise you. Whether you have readers who continue to read and buy comes down primarily to the quality of the story, which means lack of sales isn't usually a marketing problem, it's a story problem. So to write stories with intense narrative drive, you have to fix the story problems that are stopping you dead in your tracks. When stories have narrative drive problems, at least 90% of the time, the cause is found in the underlying story structure. And ideally, you want to fix those structural problems at the beginning, before you write the full novel. First of all, it saves you a lot of work, but also, when you write it as a full novel, the problems get embedded, and they're very tough to fix. Here's a dirty little secret. For most writers, the second draft is worse than the first. Nobody admits that. It's too embarrassing. I'm trying to fix this thing. I'm doing my rewrites like they always say I should, and it's getting worse. So why does this happen? Well, first of all, because rewriting is a special skill that most writers don't know. And second, as I mentioned, when you write that first draft, it hardens into mental cement. And then it becomes much tougher to fix. Also, if you're trying to write a book a month, which is extraordinarily difficult, you need to be able to correctly set up the story fast. But fixing structural problems is valuable at any point of the writing process. And that's the purpose of today. Fixing deep structural problems in your story right now. You may have stories you have already written that you want to apply this to. You might be midway through your story. You might even be stuck finishing the story. Doesn't matter. What we're doing today is going to help you fix it, no matter what stage of the process you are in right now. And mark my words, this is a skill that will put you ahead of some of the most seasoned veteran writers. It is very valuable. I'd like to go through 7 of the most important techniques for getting your story right. And we're going to do it using a workshop format, so you can fix some of these big problems in your story now. The first technique for creating strong narrative drive is the premise of the story. Premise, which is also known as the log line, is your story stated in one sentence. And it's the first step in the entire writing process. Here's why this is such a big deal. 99% of stories fail at the premise line. They fail at the very beginning. Now, that's an amazing number. And it tells you you have to get the premise right, or you're dead before you've even begun. It means most writers are writing these stories, they don't know they're already dead. It's not going to work. After all, why are you going to spend all that time and effort writing a series if an idea with strong narrative drive isn't there in the first place? Makes no sense. So, how do you tell if your story has great narrative drive when you've only written a single premise line? If you don't know how to come up with a popular premise, this is one of the most difficult things to do as a novelist. Now, it turns out that the best premise in popular novels is known as high concept, which means a story idea with a big plot twist or plot contrast that surprises the reader. And this gives us the first technique for creating maximum narrative drive. Your hero is an underdog who must overcome extreme odds to accomplish a specific and difficult goal. Now, why is this so important? Well, first of all, readers root for the underdog. This way, you immediately set up reader identification with your hero. And that means you get the reader to care about your hero. Nothing is more important in generating multiple books in a series and getting the reader to buy every one of those books. Reason 2, the greater the odds against the character, the greater the final success. And 3, one of the ways you increase the odds is to give the hero a weakness that makes it especially hard for him to win. Here's an example from a highly successful online novel that became a publishing home run and a blockbuster movie. I mean, you can't be any more successful with a story than this one. The premise for The Martian is a stranded astronaut must survive an uninhabitable planet to return to Earth. Or as the poster says, help is only 140 million miles away. I'm sure he doesn't find that amusing, but we do. That's a hero who has to overcome extreme odds. That's a hero I care about. That's a story with terrific narrative drive, and that's a story I want to read. So what's the test for making this happen in your story? Ask yourself, does the hero have a disadvantage that makes him uniquely unsuited to being successful in this particular fight? And what's the fix to this problem? At the beginning, give your hero a personal quality or weakness that makes it even harder for him to win. Why is this crucial to any story you write? It's one of the keys to great story. Give the hero both an internal and an external opponent. Both an internal and an external opponent. The internal opponent is a weakness that holds him back from success. Now, Harry Potter is an excellent example of this technique. In the first book, Harry is 11 years old, and he's going up against the most powerful wizard in history. 11-year-old kid. So he's a huge underdog. His weaknesses: he's untrained, he lacks confidence, and he's afraid, as well he should be. Or take Lord of the Rings. Frodo couldn't be more unsuited for his goal. That was on purpose. He's physically small, he's timid, and he's untested. And he has to do the most heroic thing imaginable. Okay, it's time for a little speed writing. Not that we're going to write that much here, but let's take a couple of minutes to make this fix in your story right now. This is like speed chess. Remember, you can change what you write at any time. In your worksheets, write down the added weakness you're going to give your hero. And it can be more than one. Also, how is your hero an underdog in this fight? Keep your answers brief. 2 minutes, starting now. A desire is the second major story element that creates strong narrative drive in your novel. It's what the hero wants in this story. And the right desire line practically guarantees a novel series with strong narrative drive. Desire is the source of narrative drive. It's the spine of the book. And it gives you the plot line. So you've got to get this right. It also gives you the second technique for getting maximum narrative drive in your novels. Give your hero a specific goal. I can't emphasize that word specific enough. That means you have to be clear about the end point of the goal. In other words, what's the specific event that will indicate if the hero has reached the goal or not? It must be very clear. If the goal is not specific, the story has no spine. This guarantees that narrative drive extends not just through one novel, but through multiple novels. And it gives you the climactic punch you have to make the reader love your book. And why is that such a big deal? because the reader then immediately wants to binge read your entire novel series. That builds your brand. And that's what this is all really about. Let's look at The Lord of the Rings, all-time great novel trilogy. Here's how Tolkien stretched the story over 3 long novels. The hero's desire for all 3 books is Frodo's quest to return the ring to the fires of Mount Doom. Notice how specific that is. It has a clear endpoint that tells you if he succeeds or fails. Now, what's the test for making this happen in your story? Is there a moment near the end when the reader knows whether the hero accomplished the goal or not? And what's the fix to this problem? In a scene near the beginning of the story, have your hero state exactly what he wants. So, write down the scene I'm going to have him say this is, and dialogue I may use includes, again, this dialogue is not written in stone. And when it comes time to writing the story, you may not even say it in dialogue. For example, in romance, the desire is often expressed just in a look. This is to get you thinking about a specific goal. Remember to ask yourself, is there a specific moment when the reader knows if the hero got the goal or not? Let's take 2 minutes, starting now. Here's another key technique for creating maximum narrative drive in your novel series. Increase the intensity by which the hero wants the goal. In other words, she must really want it. This is known as increasing the stakes. Stakes have to do with what the hero has to gain or lose by going after this goal. And there's a rule that all best-selling novelists know about the stakes, which is the higher the stakes, the more books you sell. And that's why popular novel series often have societal or worldwide stakes. Now, why is intense desire so important? Because the more the hero wants the goal, the more the reader wants her to get it. This also gives your hero a moral challenge. We see this in the test for making this happen in your story. Ask yourself, how far is she willing to go to get her goal? And what's the fix for this problem? Have her take actions to win the goal she would never have thought possible at the beginning of the story. It's the question, how far will you go to win? A good example of this is in The Hunger Games. She finds herself in a fight with life or death stakes. Katniss is willing to kill to survive, but she draws the line with certain people she cares about, and she won't cross that line. In The Dark Knight, Batman is willing to do anything to defeat the Joker, but he will not murder. That's where he draws the line. Let's take 2 minutes to write this down. The actions my hero takes to demonstrate she's serious about this are, and the reason we know this is different from when she started is 2 minutes. Now, a third major element of narrative drive is the opponent. This character will do more to give your novel series narrative drive than any other story element. So you must come up with a strong opponent. The question is, how do you set up the opposition to create narrative drive, not just over one novel, but over an entire novel series? You do it by understanding that the true opponent in your novel series is any person who wants to prevent the hero from getting his goal. Notice how this third element of narrative drive, the opponent, is connected to the second one, desire. The opponent wants to prevent the hero from getting his goal. This creates conflict that never stops, that just gets hotter. And that's guaranteed to build narrative drive over 3 or more novels. Why? Because they're fighting over the same thing. The hero and the opponent are forced to fight again and again, like two rams bashing heads. It's all about that goal that you set up that organizes the novel series. That's why we have to start with that goal. This lets you build the conflict over as many novels as you want until someone actually wins the goal. And big conflict means sales, big sales. And that leads to the next key technique. For maximum narrative drive, you want one main opponent who attacks the hero relentlessly and who adjusts his attacks to what the hero tries to do. This is one of the most important keys to great plot. Having a main opponent gives the hero and the story focus. The reader knows that that character is the one the hero has to beat if he's going to be successful in reaching his goal. So the opponent becomes the person the reader loves to hate. But here's the trick. A good opponent doesn't just sit there while the hero goes after his goal. A good opponent attacks relentlessly because he's obsessed with stopping the hero and getting the goal for himself. And the more the opponent adjusts his attacks to what the hero is doing, the craftier the opponent is and the more difficult he is to beat. This builds the conflict and increases the plot. And you know what that means. More book sales. All of these techniques are going for that. Now, what's the test for making this happen in your story? Ask yourself, who's your hero's nemesis? What's the fix to this problem? Ask, who is most determined to stop the hero from reaching her goal? Some examples of the main opponent in novel series. In Harry Potter, Voldemort. Hunger Games, President Snow. Lord of the Rings, Saruman. Let's take 2 minutes to write down who is your hero's nemesis and how will he try to stop the hero from getting her goal. Try to come up with as many ways as possible that the hero can try to stop the hero, that the opponent will try to stop the hero from getting her goal. This leads to technique number 5. For maximum narrative drive, you want the hero to fight more opponents than just the main opponent. By increasing the number of opponents, you increase the amount of plot in your story exponentially. Each opponent is attacking the hero from a different direction, in a different way. So the conflict is non-stop, and the narrative drive goes through the roof. Result, you've got loads of plot to fill 3, 4, even 12 books in your series. What's the test for making this happen in your story? Are there at least two other characters who want to prevent the hero from getting his goal? And the fix to this problem, try to introduce at least 2 other opponents, but hide how they're connected to the main opponent. And why do we do this? The more opponents you have, the more plot you have. Keeping their connection hidden increases the plot even more. Some examples of secondary opponents in novel series. In Hunger Games, other fighters in the arena and Seneca. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, his aunt and uncle, Draco Malfoy, Mr. Filch, Professor Quirrell, and apparently Snape. Lord of the Rings, we have Sauron, Gollum, the Balrog, the Nazgul, Shelob, and the Orcs. He sure had a good time making up those names, didn't he? And he's spoken about it as he created his own language. Now let's take 2 minutes to write down who are the other characters who will fill the opponent role. You're not limited to 2. Then explain how are they connected to the main opponent. Now, one of the biggest decisions you have to make in the writing process is what's your genre? Genre is a type of plot, like romance, crime, fantasy, or action. As I mentioned yesterday in the Secrets of Genres class, genres are the foundation of 99% of all novels, films, television, and video games made in the world. That's how important they are. Genre has more effect on how you tell the story than any other element. Leads to a key point. You must determine up front which genres you're going to use for your story idea. Because these genres tell you the plot beats that must be in your story. This leads to technique number 6. Base your story on a mix of 2 to 3 genres. This is one of the most important story strategies today. Almost all popular novels are a combination of 2, 3, even 4 genres. The benefit of that is that you radically increase your plot when you do that. Let's look at the genres that are found in Harry Potter, Hunger Games, and Lord of the Rings. You thought they were just one? No. Harry Potter, fantasy, myth, horror, and coming-of-age English schoolboy. Yes, that is a genre. Examples include Tom Brown's School Days and Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Hunger Games, myth, science fiction, and action. Lord of the Rings, myth, fantasy, and action. So what's the test for making this happen in your story? Does your story idea suggest plot beats from 2 or 3 genres? So let's take a minute to write down the 2 or 3 genres you think might be present in your premise idea, your core story idea. Now, this raises an important question. How does genre affect narrative drive? Well, lots of ways, and I go through them in the classes I do on genres, which I'll show you at the end. The most important is that each genre has embedded within it a unique desire line that tracks the plot. In other words, every genre has a built-in desire line. Therefore, you must know the desire line of the genres you're using. This leads to the next technique. For maximum narrative drive, keep laser focus on the desire of the main genre. This is your spine, the foundation of your story, and it gives you the main plot beats you have to hit. This technique is also the first key for creating strong narrative drive in multiple genre stories, because it keeps you focused on a single spine, and you have to have a single spine. The test for making this happen in your story is there one genre that is clearly the most important one in your story? The fix is choose one genre to provide the story spine. Then, when it comes to writing the story, add the plot beats of the other genres only when they support the main genre. And why is that important? If you don't choose one genre to provide the spine of the story, you get story chaos. When most writers combine genres, they get story chaos because they do not use this technique. Also, this allows readers to identify your main category of fiction, which is important in marketing. Primary genre in these multi-genre stories. Harry Potter is fantasy, Hunger Games is myth, Lord of the Rings, also myth. Let's take 1 minute to put down your primary genre. Now, don't just put it down immediately. Think carefully about it. It's not always easy to tell, especially if it's between genres in the same family. If you choose the wrong genre to be the primary form, you can ruin the story idea. So think carefully. All right, we've been through a number of techniques you can use to fix your story. Applying these key techniques is going to improve your game no end. But what about the next story? What if you really want to boost your story game to the highest professional level? In order to write in multiple genres, known as genre mashups, you need to know all the genres you're working in cold. There are specific techniques that go way beyond what we have talked about today. So step one is pick the genres you're going to work with. And step two is learn them inside out. Now, you can do what I did and try to figure out these genres on your own. It took me about 30 years. And if you do it on your own, it'll take you a few years too, I guarantee it. Or you can take a look at the work that I've already done and packaged in easy-to-apply courses. So to that end, if you're interested, take a look at the genre classes and software on my website, where I cover all these techniques and plot beats in great detail. You can learn these techniques either through an audio class or right on your computer while you write your story. And the link, as you can see there, is truby.com/members/Vegas 20Books. Plus, there is a 20Books Vegas discount of up to 70%. Yes, it's quite a good discount. This discount is available for a limited time and only to people attending the 20Books conference right now. To get it, you must use the coupon that is listed there. You can see it's Vegas 2021. I guarantee if you listen and re-listen to these classes and apply the techniques to even one of your chosen genres, you will elevate your story to the highest professional level. Quick note, if you want to purchase any of the genre add-on software, you have to have the main Blockbuster program to do that. But you only need it once. Now, any questions in what we've talked about today or about story problems you are facing? We've been given a little leeway because there's no class coming afterwards, but we do have to be out of here before 5 o'clock. But any questions that you have at all?
I was just wondering, when you're writing in a series, you have your overall goal that they're pursuing through all the books, but then do you also have a goal that is for each individual book?
You hit it right there. Super important what this person just said, which is that we want a specific goal for the entire series. We want a specific goal that links for each novel in the series. Right? So these are not going to be separate goals from the overall goal. They're part of that overall arc. But there is a specific endpoint to each of those novels in terms of the hero accomplishing something by the end of that story. Otherwise, it won't feel like it's a complete book. And the reader will be very unhappy about that. Another question? Don't be shy.
Yes, okay. I was wondering, have you ever seen an example of someone successfully, instead of just combining genres, switching genres in a book? Maybe sort of like as a plot twist.
I've seen it done, but I've never seen it done successfully. For those of you who may not have heard, can you switch genres in the middle of the book or in the middle of the series? You want to embed all of the genres that you're going to be using in that series from the beginning. However, having said that, you can have one of your genres be more in the forefront in one book and then recede a little bit and another genre kick in. But the way it's usually done is that you will have one main genre, then the second, third, and sometimes fourth genres. Those are the ones that will come in and out a little bit. That's where you have more leeway in terms of playing with all the genres. Because remember, it's all about taking multiple storylines, because each genre is a storyline. It's all about taking multiple storylines, blending them to appear to be a single storyline. That's what the reader should be experiencing. You are the writer, you're the magician, so you are making that blend. And you're pulling from all these different sources of power for plot. Because again, each one of these genres is a plot form. It's already been worked out. That's why genres are the key to story, worldwide story today. They are a story system. And so when you start layering in multiple genres, the amount of increase in plot that you get is just overwhelming. And again, your big fear is story chaos. You've got to be able to know how to blend them correctly. That's why that primary genre is so important. But if you can blend them right, the reader just gets overwhelmed, and they just love it. They just want it. They want this series to go on forever.
Hi, I'm not even sure how to ask this question, but can you apply this to standalone novels, first of all, and how would that be? Or I write in a series that the link is the small town, whereas the main character is different in every book. They're connected by friendship and living in this small town together.
Right. Now,
Thank you.
The answer to that question is going to be very dependent on the particular story that you're telling, because if it's set in a small town, it's very possible that you are doing a small town drama, personal drama with various people in this town. Would that be a correct assumption on my part? Yeah. In which case, drama is, a lot of times people ask, well, where's drama? Why is drama not on your list of genres? Because technically speaking, it is not a genre. Drama is so broad a story form that it doesn't have a unique hero, like detective story. Detective story has a detective as the hero. That's already predetermined. We know that. Drama, anybody can be the hero in a drama. So what you do a lot of times is, when you have drama, is what you try to do, because drama, one of the features of drama, because it's so broad and so dispersed, is it doesn't have these set plot beats, so it doesn't have a density of plot. Drama is notorious for having a weak plot. But what is it good at? It's good at this interchange between human beings, emotional interchange between people, especially within the family. And so it has great power. So what the drama writers will often do is they'll try to combine it with some of the other genres that are heavy in plot. So that's why we get the cozy mystery. Cozy mystery is a combination basically of detective and drama. Right? It's very personal. It's very small scale. Right? We're not going for the big reveals that we get in typically the classic city, the mean streets of the city type detective stories. But they're very powerful because that personal element is so strong, and readers love that. So in your particular case, when you have different characters coming forward and back, this is a very advanced story technique, and so I wish you the best of luck, because if you succeed, it's terrific. It's very tough to pull off. What you have to do is you have to give each of the main characters a goal of their own. And then what you're going to do, it's very similar to the way TV works, TV drama works. What you're going to do is you weave the desire lines of these various characters. And one scene, we will deal with character A taking an action step to reach her goal. And then in the very next scene, we will see character B taking an action step to reach his goal. And pardon? Okay, then it's good. Same thing, you'll just extend each one of the main characters in that novel will have their goal that will track. That'll be the spine of the story. But you still, because you have a universe that we want these people to interconnect, I would have all of the other characters who are eventually going to have their time in the sun, I would have them have desires as well. Okay, but that's going to be receding in the background. Now, very interesting case study here. This is in the romance area. In Bridgerton, here's the question: how do we create a novel